Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to my channel. It's Gio. I wasn't necessarily planning on filming a video today, but I have spent pretty much the entire week VOD reviewing for stuff. Not anything involved in Siege. Anyway, after a certain amount of VOD review, you kind of just need a break. So I wanted to make some content, and given that SI is coming up, I figured it was the perfect time to do some about that. So as with every tournament, there's always a lot of debate about specifically what region is going to do best in it. And given that I've been working on the Latam region for the last couple of months, I wanted to have a look at what the odds that I personally think are that Latam could make it to the finals of SI this year, because personally, I think they actually have quite a good chance. So this is entirely unscripted, which means I need to get up the Wikipedia page that actually has everything. So let's do it by group, I suppose. And Group A is really the group where most of these LATAM teams are. We have FaZe Clan, Furia, Team Liquid, and Team One are all in Group A. And I think this is probably going to be the harder group of the two, especially as there's one more team in Group A than there is in Group B. So this is going to be quite difficult. So just looking at the recent results of these teams in LATAM, FaZe, Furia, Liquid, and Team One all played in the Copa Elite 6, which is the finals, is sort of the stage finals of the LATAM region, where you have the Brazil region, the Mexican region, and the South American region all come together and fight. They play together, I guess. Team Liquid won that, and it was MIBR who came in second, but all of these teams were a part of it. I think Furia, let's start with them, because Furia is this team that kind of surprised everyone with the fact that they even qualified for SI, given the fact that Furia were in a really tough spot last year. They were the team in the Brazilian region that actually had to go through relegations and managed to claw their way back into the league. And yet they still qualified for the biggest event of the Siege calendar. In stage 1 of the BR6 this year, they actually did pretty good, but then they seemed to fall flat on their face a little bit in the Copa Elite 6 and didn't actually make it into playoffs. They were the only Brazilian team to not make playoffs in the Copa Elite 6. Now, I don't know how much of that is because they knew that SI was upcoming, or if they just sincerely failed. We only casted the playoffs in English, so I didn't get to see a lot of Furia's playing when they were in the group stages of the Copa Elite 6. But the point is, Furia have actually looked pretty good in stage 1 and beat a number of teams in Brazil that maybe we would have naturally assumed would have done better than them. So even though they didn't have the best run in the Copa Elite 6, I still want to believe that they have a chance. And I think when you look at certain teams that have maybe been struggling, that are playing here in Group A, like Team Empire, for example, maybe even Dark Zero, Furia still have a decent chance of beating them. But I think it's when you look to the international teams like BDS and Cloud9, that's when maybe I start to wonder where that is going to line up. There's not enough that we know about Furia to say whether they're going to beat them or not. And I certainly think that they might have a bit of a tough time, especially against Team Liquid and FaZe Clan, when looking at the home teams that they'll be facing. FaZe Clan are also an interesting one, because FaZe have been the really big point of conversation of the Brazilian teams. You know, they basically bought out the championship MIBR roster, kept them with Astro, and together they have just been this super team. FaZe Clan showed so much ingenuity, creativity, ballsiness in a lot of the way that they played in the BR6 stage 1, but then didn't get past the quarterfinals, or what was it, the semi-final? They didn't get past the first round of playoffs in Copa Elite 6. They lost to, I think it was Team One. I should probably check. Yeah, FaZe Clan didn't get through the quarterfinals. They lost to Team One. It was a 2-1 victory to Team One. So that in and of itself was kind of a surprise, and also maybe a bit concerning. I had some doubts about FaZe Clan just because I think that while they've shown so much prowess in Brazil, they haven't necessarily been super consistent. And while they've been trying out a lot of really cool things in many of the games that they've played, how is that actually going to fare when they have to be consistent and they have to be always strong and not letting up against some of these teams? And I think put them against a team like Team Liquid, I actually think Team Liquid are better than FaZe Clan in Brazil at the moment. And even someone like Team 1, who I know many people have doubts. I watched the episode of 6 on 6 between Fabian and Parker, and they were saying that they don't think much about Team 1. I don't think Team 1 are a team to sleep on. But it's going to be teams like that that could maybe catch FaZe Clan out in areas where really this team is good enough that they shouldn't be caught out in. Moving on to Team Liquid, I have a lot of faith in Team Liquid. I think for me, probably right now, they're my favorites to win the entire thing. Team Liquid had so much consistency in stage 1 of the BR6 as well as the Cobra Elite 6. And they have a very suffocating playstyle where Team Liquid almost always set up for a post plant, and it doesn't even mean that they're necessarily starting off in post plant positions. They have done that against a number of teams, but they are always thinking so many steps ahead that they've already considered what's going to happen because they're so objective focused. Sexy Cake is so fast at getting the plant down. Team Liquid have already considered what it is they're going to do once that's happened. And I think a lot of teams don't necessarily play that many steps ahead of what they're doing. And I think that's where Team Liquid really have a lot of opportunity to catch other teams out. I'm very excited to see how they're going to fare against a team like BDS, because I think that BDS could be a big threat to them. I know that BDS technically didn't come first in Europe in this last stage, but BDS are also just always have every base covered. It seems that historically BDS has been a team where it doesn't really matter what you do against them, they always have something to counter your decision making. And I think that will potentially be very hard against Team Liquid. I don't know at what point Team Liquid will be playing Dark Zero, but that's one I'm going to be very interested in because Dark Zero are a very prep heavy team. And I think if they play Team Liquid first and they have a lot of prep against them, then they could also be a threat. But if they play them last in a playday, for example, and they haven't had as much opportunity to prep specifically against what Team Liquid bring out, then Team Liquid probably have the upper hand there. I also think Dark Zero having lost Hot and Cold will probably weaken them against a team like Team Liquid. But yeah, I'm not sure. Team Liquid versus G2, also really interested in that. G2 came, what, 5th in Europe this stage, which is maybe not as high as people were expecting, but there is a part of me that does suspect that G2 have got things up their sleeve. And I know everyone likes the meme about G2 saving strats, but I reckon G2 will probably do better at SI than their placement in EU stage 1 would allow us to believe. Team 1, I do think, are going to be a bit of a wild card, and they're certainly going to be tested against their adversaries here in Group A. The thing with Team 1 is Team 1 have Alamau, and I don't want to say that it all comes down to one player, but Alamau has been basically the best player in Brazil consistently throughout stage 1 of the BR6, and he's actually beaten Palu in pretty much all of the stats. Towards the start of the stage, it was Palu who was number 1 for everything. Alamau overtook him. But the thing with Team 1 is it was a team that was brought together at the start of the stage with players from all sorts of different teams, and they've been synergizing over the course of the stage. But that's actually gone really fucking well for them. They've synergized incredibly, and the way that they all play together is also very impressive. When you have players like KDS as well, he really hits his shots. He's great at that. Alamau, great support player, to the extent that basically every team who played Team 1 in the Cobra Elite 6 target banned against him. And if you're looking for what those target bans are, it's always going to be a Buck or a Smoke. Most likely Buck will be target banned if they're just doing one. But that's just a testament to how much power and potency he has in this roster. I think Team 1 have had a really solid, steady linear trajectory in terms of their improvement. And I would like to see how that fares here in SI. They're probably not going to at least advance to the upper bracket. I don't think they're going to make it in the top 4. But I could totally see them causing some big upsets, especially when you look at the more kind of low-hanging fruit like Team Empire, maybe Furia, maybe even FaZe Clan. You know, we've seen Team 1 beat them before. They could catch out Dark Zero. They could get... admittedly, I don't know how well Cyclops have been doing because I haven't watched any APAC. But Team 1, I think, are the dark horse of that group. Moving on to Group B, which is where we have MIBR and NIP. So there's only 2 Latin American teams on Group B. I also think, kind of along with general consensus, that this is the weaker group as well. Now, starting with MIBR have performed incredibly well. This is the old Team 1 roster. Because when FaZe Clan bought out MIBR then bought out Team 1. So a lot of these rosters kind of just shifted through LATAM. MIBR have looked really, really strong throughout the course of the stage. And the thing with MIBR as well is they lost Lukid and Bodega, who is their coach, at some point quite early on in the stage because of COVID. Regardless of that, they still were putting up really good numbers and getting really good results. And then Bodega and Lukid came back stronger than ever. I mean, Lukid has just been playing out of his mind since then. So the fact that they could go through that kind of hardship and still seem unscathed, if not better than they were before, I think is really impressive. And I think that that kind of shows the tenacity that this team have. And I reckon that they will go in full force when playing against everybody else in Group B. They lost 2-1 to Team Liquid in the Copa Elite 6 finals, but I don't think that's a massive deal here. They still played really, really well. And they're not in the same group as Team Liquid. So doesn't matter. There are a lot of teams in Group B that... So I think that Oxygen and TSM will probably be the hardest teams for them. Giants could be really difficult, but Giants have also had a tough time in APAC South this stage, and I don't know if that's because of behind the scenes things or if that's because their level of play has changed. Giants also only just found out that Hysterics can actually play with them at SI, so they've kind of had some shakiness, and I don't know if we're gonna see, you know, Giants of 2020 come into SI or Giants of 2021 come into SI, and I think depending on that is going to change how well MIBR do against them. MKers, they'll win against them. Parabellum, they'll win against them. Space Station, you know, it's hard to call. From what I've heard, they seem to be doing really well with Canadian back on the roster, but you also never know how much that's going to translate to real life and how much practice they've had with him is going to be sufficient against everybody else. So that one is very, very difficult to call if you ask me. I think that would be a really interesting game though. Assuming that SSG are doing well, I think that would be a really interesting game, MIBR versus SSG. TSM, I would like to see them do better than they did in stage 1 of the NAL. They didn't have the best run, but I also believe that this is one of those teams that maybe could have kept some stuff to themselves and bring everything out in full force. We need Bolo to be on top form if that is the case, but I could see TSM beating MIBR. Virtus Pro, again, they also had a bit more of a tough EUL. I think that would be a really interesting matchup, actually. Yeah, I think for Group B, MIBR versus SSG and MIBR versus Virtus Pro. I'm excited about those. And then when we look to Ninjas in Pajamas, you know, I've received a lot of flack because I've talked a bit tough on NIP this stage so far, but I think they kind of deserve it. NIP have not looked like the NIP that we very, very much know. NIP, even when we look in the Copa Elite 6, they went out in the semi-finals playing against MIBR. It was, I'm pretty sure that was one of those games where NIP picked Clubhouse and didn't win Clubhouse. And Clubhouse, again, you should be winning the maps that you pick, but Clubhouse is one of those maps that, like, it's so standard that if a team is picking Clubhouse, they should be really confident on it, and they weren't, and that concerned me. So I don't really know what's going on behind the scenes with NIP. You know, Pino and Muzi have still been performing really, really well. Kamikaze didn't look like he was showing up that much towards the start of the stage, but he started to pick things up as the stage went on, which was nice to see. However, just some of the decision-making they made in their games was very one-dimensional, and I think that there are certain teams that are really going to punish that. You know, TSM is going to be one of them. TSM's absolutely going to punish one-dimensionality. Giants, I think they're also a team that could punish one-dimensionality against NIP. OXG, I could see punishing them for that. SSG as well, to be perfectly honest. And so I think if NIP, you know, all the physical skill, all the mechanical skill that we've always known them for has always been there. But it's fixing those issues with one-dimensionality, some strange decision-making in-game. I think if they can be fixed and have a bit more decisiveness, then I think NIP will have a pretty good time. It's just about whether or not those things get fixed. If I had to specifically predict who I think will make it, I could feasibly see every single Brazilian team making it into the playoffs bracket. But I think that Furia may end up in the bottom 2 in Group A. I would assume that Team Empire are probably another team that has a good chance of that happening, which breaks my heart because I'm such a Team Empire fangirl, but they just haven't been looking so good recently. Team 1, I suppose in theory could, but I don't know if they are the most likely to end up down there. I reckon that they'll probably scrape through on a lower bracket run. I suspect that Team Liquid at the very least will make it through into the upper bracket. FaZe Clan absolutely could be up there as well, but it depends what version of FaZe Clan we see. Looking over to Group B, I would be surprised if MIBR didn't get through into the upper bracket. But I think both MIBR and NIP will definitely qualify into the playoffs bracket. I don't see either of them making it into the bottom 2. I would like to believe that NIP can also make it into the upper bracket. It wouldn't surprise me if they kind of came in around that 5th, 6th position and were sort of the top half of the lower bracket qualified teams. But again, that really depends on how well they've improved on certain issues that they were having throughout the course of this stage. All in all, I still think it is entirely likely that we will have at least one Brazilian team in the finals. It would be crazy if we had 2. Personally, I think that Team Liquid have a decent likelihood of getting into the finals for SI. I think a lot of people are sharing that sentiment right now. A lot of the reason being is because what we've seen specifically in EU and NA is the teams that sort of came at the top of those regions this past stage aren't necessarily teams who are qualified for SI. So being able to judge on recent performance of the teams that are SI qualified has become significantly harder. Whereas for Brazil, it's been a lot more consistent, and it's those same teams that are qualified for SI that have actually done well in the BR6 in the last stage. I don't like to make predictions though, and we all saw how my NAL predictions went, so I'm gonna leave it at that, I think. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. You know, if you've been looking at social media and you saw the talent announcement for SI, you'll know that unfortunately I wasn't asked to work the event, which is a shame, but Ollie, who I cast with in Latam, he's gonna get to be there, so I'm excited to see him do that. And I am, of course, gonna still watch the event and hopefully make some content throughout the course of it. That is my plan. We'll see if I stick to it. So yeah, hopefully I will see you guys throughout the course of the event, and I'm looking forward to seeing what all of you think. Let me know what your opinions are on the things that I've said in this video, how you think that the Brazilian teams are gonna do, because Brazil's been kind of wild this past stage. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.